you can find it in a couple different places. Okay, so I'll just give you a quick overview about me. Like Riley said, I own BLG Business Solutions. I'm a social media marketer, and my focus is all about small business owners. So I hope that you guys can get a lot out of this. Maybe get interested in Pinterest if you're not already, or if you're already using Pinterest, just some tips to make it even more effective. And there, the link there, if you want to check me out on Pinterest, is at the bottom of the page. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about why you might want to use Pinterest for your business, go over optimizing your Pinterest account. Then we'll jump over to your website and how to make your website Pinterest friendly, as well as a bunch of tips and tricks about using Pinterest in general. Some tools that you can use beyond just Pinterest, and then analytics, which some people consider really boring, but it's actually really, really interesting. So, and the other thing I wanted to note is that anything I talk about in the webinar, any tools or websites, they're all free or have free subscription services. Some of them will have paid versions, but everything can be accessed free. So I'm not going to tell you to use something really great and then you go and find out that you have to pay $50 a month for it or anything like that. I wouldn't do that to you. Okay, so why would you use Pinterest for your business? So I've dug out some stats for you. And the first one to note is there are about 40 million active Pinterest users. So that's people who are using Pinterest every day. There's about 70 million in total, and 40 million of those are active. And when you look just at Canada, we have the second largest user base at around 5 million users. Of course, the States is the largest user base, of course. So we're number two, but 5 million people is still pretty good. And one of the most important things to note, so you're thinking about the people who are on Pinterest, every time they go on Pinterest, they're spending an average of 14 minutes. And so that could be once a day, that could be 10 times a day, right? But when people go onto Pinterest, they're there for a little while. It's not just like logging onto Facebook, scrolling through your news feed, and then putting your phone back in your pocket, right? They're there and they're engaged. And I know there's kind of a running joke about Pinterest that it sucks up all your time. So a lot of people go on Pinterest and suddenly an hour has gone by and they've just had so much fun pinning things, but they didn't even notice that time was slipping by. So from a business perspective, when you're thinking about your customers, you want them to have fun and lose track of time looking at your products or your services or the things that you're trying to show them. So a couple more stats here. Um, Shopify is a website that integrates a lot with Pinterest, and so they tend to keep a really close eye on what's going on. And so their most recent study, which was over the 2014 holiday shopping season, um, they found that the average Pinterest shopper spent about $60. And that means that somebody who found something on Pinterest and then went to that person's website to purchase. So those people on average are spending about $50, which is higher than some of the other really popular social networks like Facebook and Twitter. Um, and the other thing is that Pinterest drives way more referral traffic to websites than any other social network, and the only exception for that is Facebook. Of course, Facebook has a bigger user base, so that's to be expected. But Pinterest is really, really great for driving people back to your website, better than Twitter or Reddit or Stumbled Upon or LinkedIn or anything like that. So it's a good way to get found, right? let's jump in. I want to talk about our websites for a second, because your website really online should be your home base, and you want to make sure that people can easily pin things from your website. Because if it's too hard, then we might not. We all are pretty short of time. So when things are easy, we're more likely to do them, right? So one of the things I want to note about the website stuff is that some of these are a bit technical. So depending on your comfort with your website or even your access to the back end, you may not be able to do these yourself. You may have to ask your web designer or your web administrator to do them for you. So I won't go into the technical details, but I just want to make you guys aware of these things so that you can ask your web administrator and you know these features are there to improve your website and Pinterest integration. So the number one tip of making your website Pinterest friendly: images, 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 good quality images. Pinterest it doesn't allow image pins that are less than 100 by 200 pixels, right? So that's the smallest size of pin that you can make. But of course, bigger is better. If you've ever gone onto Pinterest, you know that the images tend to be tall and skinny, right? The ideal width for an image to be on Pinterest is 735 pixels. I want to make sure I've got that right. Yeah. So you want it to be high quality too, right? Because Pinterest is all about visuals. And so if you have great looking images, people are more likely to pin them. So that's the first thing, that every page, even if it's a page that's predominantly text, you want at least one good image, because then people might be more likely to pin that, right? The next thing is adding a pin it button, and you can add some code to your website so that every image that you have on every page will be able to be pinned by this pin it button. Um, they have some nice features now where you can make the buttons slightly different color or shape depending on the aesthetic of your website. So that's a bit nice. But it just is like a shortcut for pinning. It's always nice to have, because if people see it and they'll think, oh yeah, I could pin this on Pinterest, whereas they might not think about it if they don't see that right there in their face. Okay, the other thing that's kind of in line with the pin it button is that you can also put some code in your website so that every image that gets pinned has default text, which would be like, for example, I recommend adding your business name and your website address, and that information will pop up with every pin, and it'll be like the default comment that shows up in the pin. And the reason why you might want to do that is twofold. So the first thing is that whatever shows up in your pin description is searchable. So when people are searching for pins and you have the word that they're looking for is something that's in your pin description, that pin might show up in the search results. The second thing is that when people are pinning, they don't often go to the effort to modify the pin description. Now, some people do, but a lot of people don't. So if you have nothing in your description, it's kind of a lost opportunity to brand yourself. So I'd highly recommend that you do that. You just have to keep in mind that that default text is going to be the same for every pin. So you don't want to put anything too specific in there, because then, of course, it doesn't apply to all pins. So keep it generic and about your business. Okay. The next thing is the Pinterest follow button or link. And of course, that's just like all the other social networks have like follow buttons or like buttons. Um, you can go into Pinterest and create a widget that you can put on your website that just encourages to follow you. You can also have it display a couple of your latest pins as well, so they can kind of see what you're doing. And yeah, so displaying your pins and boards on your website, which is what I just talked about. I got ahead of myself for a second. um, so you can display sometimes almost a whole page of pins. So it's almost like having your Pinterest page on your website, or just a little sample of them. Totally up to you, but it gives people a nice idea of what you're pinning. Again, it just reminds them that, oh, hey, these people are on Pinterest. Well, I'm on Pinterest, so I really like this picture. I'm going to pin it. So before I keep going, I just want to talk about the fact that some of these things you should be doing, even if you as a business are not on Pinterest. Um, the people looking at your website might be on Pinterest, right? So even if you're not, if you don't have an account and you're like, no, I don't have time to do Pinterest, you still might really need to take the time to make your website Pinterest friendly, right? Because you still want your stuff to be showing online. And like I said before, Pinterest is really great for getting traffic back to your website. So really seriously consider um, having the great images and the pin it button, um, even if you're not on Pinterest. Okay, so next. Now these pins are specifically for people who are on Pinterest. Pinterest has what they call rich pins, which are kind of specialized pins that you can add additional information to. And so for most of us, article pins and product pins probably cover, let's say, 90% of what we might have on our websites. But they've also got place pins, recipe pins, and movie pins. So let's back up a second and go back to article pins. So what those do is allow you to add information to every pin that gets pinned, like the headline, the author, and the story description of the pin. So like before when I was talking about you could make a widget, or sorry, you could add code to your website that inserted a default pin description for every pin. The rich pins are the same idea, but they are specific and customized. So for example, if I had, well, actually, I'll show you an example of an article pin in a little bit. So let's go on to product pins. So product pins are really good for retail websites. And the reason why is that they can include real-time pricing. So even if you have something that goes on sale and that pin has been put on Pinterest, the price will change on Pinterest for people looking at it. So they won't see it and then come back to your website and go, oh, hey, there's a sale. They'll know right away on Pinterest that the price has gone down. They'll also be able to see the availability and where to buy it if there are multiple stores. And there's also a way for pinners to get notifications if something that they've pinned goes on sale or drops in price. So that's pretty awesome. The next thing is the place pins. And the place pins obviously would just include a map, an address, and then also a phone number. Now the recipe pins, those are pretty straightforward too. So I won't go into too much detail about them. You can put like the cooking times and the ingredients. And then movie pins. So the movie pins would have things like ratings, the cast members, and any movie reviews. So it's like a little snippet of information that people on Pinterest can see to kind of entice them to click through back to your website to get more information. So here's an example of an article pin. So I've got just a regular pin and an article pin, so you can see the difference between the two. So on the left-hand side, the regular pin, you can see it has a pin description there. It doesn't look really nice, but on the right-hand side, the article pin, it's got, like it says my company name, and it even has my logo. And then the heading is bolded really nicely, and the description is nicely formatted. So it just looks more attractive. So when you're scrolling through, um, these stand out a bit more than regular pins. So if you're a blogger, you definitely want to look into getting article pins set up on your website. Again, it's a bit technical, so you might have to ask for help from your web administrator. Okay, and then I want to do one more example of a product pin. So here again, on the left-hand side is the regular pin. On the right-hand side is the product pin. So again, you can see the logo, the company name, and the item for sale is bolded. And then the description again is just, it's formatted nicely. You can see the price in there. And so if this person did lower the price and we went back to Pinterest, we'd be able to see that updated price right on the pin. So yeah, rich pins are really good. You can get creative. I know people might think, well, for example, movie pins. Well, what would I use a movie pin for? My business doesn't have anything to do with movies. But what if your business was an industry that movies were made about that industry? Maybe you want to start a board that has um, movie pins on it that you can review movies to say, oh, this movie reflected my industry in a really great way because, and you can have those kinds of things. So it allows you to get a bit creative. They look more attractive on the Pinterest screen. So that is a really quick overview of the rich pins. The next thing I want to talk about is the tips. So let's get into some kind of best practices and how to get the most out of your Pinterest presence. Okay, so your boards. So if somebody comes to your Pinterest profile, they're going to see your boards. And so what you want to do here is format your boards so they all look really nice, right? You want to make your board names easy to understand and also searchable, right? Because if somebody is searching for something and your board name might pop up. I know I've seen people try to get really clever with board names, which is fun, but they're probably not going to get found in Pinterest search results if they've tried to be a bit too clever. So just stick to easy, straightforward names for your boards. And the other thing that you want to remember is that you don't want to be constantly changing your board names because each board has its own link. And so, for example, if I saw um, a board that I really liked and I sent a link to my friend saying, hey, check out this board, if you then went and changed the name of your board, that link would be broken because the link is based on your board name. So keep that in mind. Just try to think carefully about your names. You don't want to be changing them a lot. The other thing to note, and you can see in the example I gave that I didn't follow this rule, was that the board names you want to try to keep to under 20 characters because they will get cut off, just like the example I have in this photo here, right? You can still tell what it is. I mean, it says Regina Coffee Shops, but the rest of the board name is hidden unless you were to click through to the board. So I'm okay with this one because you can still tell what it is, but it's not um, the best practice. We want to try to keep it under 20 characters. Okay. You want to, um, when you start a board, you want to make sure it has at least 4 pins in it. Because as you can see from the preview, 4 pins show up. So there's the big one on top, which is your cover image, and then the 3 little samples in the bottom. And you can choose which of the pins in your board is going to be your cover. So just go through and find the nicest picture you have. Your cover image you can change as often as you like. Just keep it something really attractive that's going to draw the eye. The other thing about your boards is that you can add a description to them. I think you have about 250 characters for a board description. And so again, that might help you get found in a search result. And then it just looks nicer when somebody goes through and clicks on your board. If they can see a little bit of extra information about it. You don't always have to do that. Um, and sometimes you have boards for specific purposes, like doing things with clients or running contests, and so then you might need a board description. So just be aware that you have that space there available. And the other thing is when people come to your Pinterest page, so they see all your boards, but by default, they'll only see about the first row, and then they have to start scrolling. So kind of a best practice is to put your best or most important boards at the top of the page. So that's what people see first. I know my own personal pet peeve, I guess, when you go to somebody's Pinterest page and they have lots and lots of boards, you might be looking for a specific topic. So if you're scrolling through and trying to find the board that you want, it can be a bit frustrating. So my personal preference is to keep all the boards in alphabetical order. I still like to put the most important, like 3 or 4 boards at the top, and then I try to keep everything else in alphabetical order. That's just my own thing. You don't have to do that. Just be aware that if you start to have lots and lots of boards, it's hard for people to scroll through if they're just wanting to follow certain boards and not your entire account, because people can do that, right? They can follow your entire account or they can just follow specific boards that you have. Okay, so that's about boards. The next stuff we're going to talk about is the specific pins themselves. So pins, I would highly recommend you add original content. Um, Believe it or not, I think it's about 80%, or sorry, only 20% of the content on Pinterest is original. The other 80% is people repinning those 20% of images. So if you add your own original content, you're really only competing with the other 20% of the pins. So I highly, highly recommend that, right? Um, when you're adding your own pins, though, you do want to be aware um, that you need to optimize them a little bit, right? You want a really good quality pin, and you want to try to keep the file name containing relevant keywords. So for example, if I'm uploading an image to Pinterest, the default image name might just be a bunch of random letters and numbers. What I would do is I'd rename that file just to actually read what that image is for. I know that can be really time consuming for anyone who's uploading a lot of pins. So it's a recommended practice because it will help for search and SEO purposes. But I totally understand if you upload a lot of images and just think this is too much work. I don't think anyone is going to fault you for thinking that. Um, the other thing to make sure is that your pins actually link back to your website. I see a lot of pins where you click on them and then it's just the image itself that pops up because nobody's added a website link to it. So I don't know, like when I click on one of those pins, then I don't know, well, did the person who pin it, is this their image from their website? I don't know where to go. Maybe I'm looking for more information, but now I can't find it. So make sure your images are linked back and add great descriptions. So again, if you've got rich pins, those descriptions will automatically fill in for you based on the code you've put on your website. And keep your images tall and skinny. And of course, colorful images always work the best. They stand out on the screen, especially when people are looking at Pinterest on a laptop or a desktop, because you can see um, a few columns of images all at once. So you want yours to grab people's attention. Okay, the other thing that you don't want to forget to do on Pinterest is to engage. A lot of people don't engage. They're just concerned with pinning and repinning. And so I think there's a really big opportunity to stand out to someone if you take the time to comment on one of their pins or take the time to respond if they comment on yours. That's really important. Um, and to like pins that you see that other people have put up that you appreciate. Um, if somebody comes and likes your account, or likes a specific board, it's easy enough to reward them by then going to their account and repinning or liking some of their stuff, kind of as like a thanks for following me on Pinterest. One of the other things that you can do is you can connect some of your other accounts to Pinterest, and this will help you find your connections who are already there. So you can connect your Twitter account and your Facebook and Google accounts. And you can also connect if you use Gmail or Yahoo Mail. So it'll connect your contacts. And then it will um, have a list of all your contacts on those 5 places. And you can see who's already on Pinterest, so you can connect with them. And then you also have the option to invite the people who aren't already on Pinterest to Pinterest. And I know a lot of people sometimes don't like connecting accounts, but you can connect an account. You can see who of, say, your Twitter followers are already on Pinterest, follow them, and then you can disconnect your Twitter account. So there's no reason why that information has to stay there, right? The one thing to note about the Facebook connection is that at the moment, the Facebook connection is to your personal Facebook account. So they don't have a way at the moment to connect it to your Facebook page. So just be aware of that. So you can connect and see which of your personal Facebook friends are there, but you're not necessarily going to get at your Facebook page fans that way. Okay? And another thing you can do is create a group board. Um, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Um, but yeah, everyone likes to feel included and like they're a part of something special. So you can invite people to a group board, and that will let them pin to it. Okay, so you can just see the image example that I have there. So this is the full view of the board from a couple slides ago of Regina Coffee Shops. So because I work out of my home, I sometimes have meetings or just go out to work in a coffee shop. And there are certain coffee shops in the city that I like um, more than others. Of course, there's probably some I haven't even been to yet, but I made a board. This is, in particular, this is a place board. So it tags the location. And I invited some other friends I know that work from their homes to pin to the board. So they could see what I like, but they could also add their own recommendations. So that's how I use the place pins for my own business. Okay. Um, contests. You know, contests and social media have kind of a love-hate relationship. Um, but Pinterest, I think, actually has the most detailed and picky rules of any social media network out there when it comes to contests. The nice thing is that they do cover a lot of information and have a lot of examples of what to do and what not to do, and that's something that's missing from other places like Facebook and Twitter. Um, but at least if you read it all, you probably won't go wrong. And so there's a couple links there where you can read more about um, what you can and can't do with contests. But there's kind of four big no-nos um, that people have sometimes done. And so for contests, one pin to enter is enough. You can't ask people to pin 10 things to enter. Um, and something that people had been doing was asking people to repin the contest rules um, as kind of a way to spread the message. So Pinterest put the kibosh on that. So you can't ask people to repin your contest rules. You can't ask people to vote on things with pins or likes. Like, for example, if your contest is like who has the best photo or the best infographic or something like that, you can't use likes to win or how many repins it has as votes. And then the other thing is pin it to win it, which sounds really great, so everyone likes to use it, but you can't. You can't have a contest called Pin It to Win It. You just can't do it. Um, yeah, so the rest of the contest rules, you can see the links there. So you can type those in or Google it to get more information. And here's the last little section of our tips and tricks. So I know we talked about boards, but there are what I like to call special boards. And there's three types right now. So the first type is a secret board. And you can have, as of right now, you can have, I think, 5 secret boards on your account. I don't know why it's limited. I'm sure Pinterest has a reason for that. But basically, a secret board is one that where you can pin images, but that board is not available to the public. And so, um, in terms of kind of business strategy, this is really nice because maybe you are starting to pin stuff to a board, um, but you want a chunk of images there first before people start seeing it. So you can create a secret board and then you can put your pins in it and then you can publish it. So it's like it's ready to go. And I really like that because sometimes you want to start a board, but you only have one image, and you don't want that board sitting there with just the one image and then the other little blank previews. It just doesn't look good. So that's what you can use secret boards for. The other thing, like I was just showing you before, are the place boards, which are I think really, really great for anyone kind of in the travel industry or hospitality industry. You can create a board that instead of having pins on it, has places that's connected to the map that you see there. And it's also connected through Foursquare. So if you pin a place, the images that other people have uploaded from Foursquare will be available for you to choose from. So it's really slick. I like it. Um, if I had like a lot of local suppliers or things like that, I might create a board saying, here's where I get all my stuff. Or if I was a restaurant and all my suppliers were locally sourced, I might create a board that highlighted all of them so people know where I'm getting the food for my restaurant. That's another great example. And then the last kind is group boards, which I mentioned before. So group boards, if you have created a group board, you can invite people. People cannot join a group board. Um, so I know I've seen instances where people will create a group board and then in the board description, they'll just say, email me to be added to this board. So it's kind of a point of contact for that business to get added to the board. But some people don't like it because they're thinking, well, who's going to go to the effort of emailing me to get added to this board? Some people might not, but if your board is really great and has um, a lot of followers, then it might be worth their time to email you and say, hey, can you add me to this board? Because they want to get their pins in front of more people, right? And that's a great way to do it. And vice versa, if you see some group boards that you want to get into, um, you can just contact the owner. The owner is displayed on the board, so you could send them a message on Pinterest, or if they have contact information in their account, you could send them an email or something that way. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to get seen on some group boards. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't skip over anything. I did. I skipped over a whole section. So we're going to cover tips. I'm doing this slightly out of order. Now I'm going to go back to tools. This is what I should have covered right before tips, but I was scrolling too fast. So these are things that will make it easier for you to use Pinterest. And so the big thing, of course, is creating and editing images. So I've got some free resources here, tools that you can use to create or edit your images. My personal favorite is Canva. Um, they actually have a default Pinterest template, so you don't even really have to know what the size guidelines are. It just has kind of the recommended size in Canva. So you just click on the template and then start designing. Um, Another kind of cute one, Be Happy. It's kind of a quote designer. And so if you like to pin quotes and make your own, you can use Be Happy to make your quotes because there's a space for the text and then a space for the author, and then it even has a few icons you can add just to break up the text and some color combinations. It's really easy to use. If you do lots and lots of quotes, at some point you might um, decide that you've gone through all the color combinations and all the font combinations, and you might be looking for something a bit more advanced. But if you're just starting out, it's a really, really great tool. And so that's just for images in general. Something that's really popular, of course, on Pinterest is infographics, right? And I think that's just because the size of them kind of fits perfectly with Pinterest. And so there are some tools that you can use to make infographics. Of course, you still have to go through the work, doing all the research and finding out what information you're going to put up. Once you've done that, then these things can help you put it all together in a really visually appealing way. And I do know some of they all have free versions, and then you can kind of get fancier if you start paying for them. And I think some of them even have services where you give them the information, they'll make the infographic for you. That can get a little bit expensive, but at the same time, a really well-researched, well-designed infographic can get you a lot of traffic because people love infographics. And then some other tools for use. If you're using Pinterest, it has some browser extensions. You can get them on Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. Um, there wouldn't be anything for Internet Explorer, but those are the main three that they have. And so it just makes it easier to pin things when you're on a website. And again, don't forget, Pinterest has mobile apps both for Apple and Android. So that can make it easier if you're on the go. Something that a lot of other social networks have kind of built in is a scheduling function, and Pinterest does not, but there is a service called Tailwind that the free version of Tailwind includes a scheduling tool. So that can be really handy if you're trying to space out your pins. I know something that I've talked about before is binge pinning. So people will go in and they'll pin 100 things and then they won't be active for a month. But in the meantime, there might be 100 pins of something that I don't really care about. And so I might feel frustrated and I might go unfollow them because I don't want to see 100 pins of that one thing again, right? So it's nice to keep your pins spaced out. Um, and Tailwind will let you do that. The other nice thing that Tailwind has is some analytics and insights capabilities. I'm not going to talk about that for Tailwind because Pinterest has its own built-in analytics now, so we're going to get into that in a minute. And then the other thing you can do on Pinterest is you can pin videos. I don't know if a lot of people know that. It's been around for a little while, but it's not as popular as just pinning images. And so if you would like to make your own videos, there's a couple free tools that I like for that, and one is Animoto, and the other is Raw Shorts. So I definitely recommend to check those out because you can make your videos and then download them or embed them on your website, and then they can be pinned just like all your images. So those are the tools I want to talk about. Now we're going to skip over the tips because we already did that and straight into analytics. So I know because this is the boring stuff, I'm not going to go into too much detail, even though I really, really love it. But analytics are so important. If you are doing something in your business and not measuring the results, what is the point, right? How do you know if it's time well spent or money well spent? If you're doing ads or paying someone to do it for you? How do you know those things if you're not measuring any results? And so your analytics can do some of that. It can also give you some really great information about your audience. So let's go over some of the highlights here. So the basic analytics tells you information about your pins and your boards, like which ones are getting the most repins, which ones are getting the most likes, which ones are getting the most clicks. That one's really important if your whole purpose is to drive traffic back to your website. And then you want to use that information to say, okay, these pins and these boards, people like these ones the best. So I should find more content like this. And the ones that don't do good, well, then you know not to waste your time creating those things or pinning them, right? So that can save you a bit of time. The other thing that is new and interesting is knowing which devices your audience is using. And the reason this is interesting is because, of course, Pinterest on a desktop looks sort of similar to Pinterest on a tablet, but then Pinterest on a smartphone is pretty much limited to either one or two columns, depending on the version of your phone. So if you find that your pins are more popular, say, on an like on a smartphone, then you know, okay, people are scrolling through and they're maybe only seeing one pin at a time and then they like it. But when they're looking at their desktop and they're seeing a whole bunch of columns of pins, they're not liking. Well, maybe because your pins aren't standing out enough from the crowd. So that could give you a hint about maybe you need to use more color or better quality images, things like that. The other information you can get about your audience is some basic demographics, like what country they live in, what languages they speak. And of course, that can always be helpful because um, if you have a significant audience that speaks another language, but yet all of your pins are English, maybe a strategy might be to start pinning things, if it's appropriate for your business, of course, in that other language, because maybe that will engage them a bit more. Okay? And this is my favorite. So finding out what your audience is interested in. So your Pinterest analytics will tell you the kinds of pins and boards that your audience is liking and repinning. So for example, I pulled this from mine, so I can see that my audience, like one of the things they're really interested in is photography. So even though I do social media, well, social media involves a lot of images. So maybe I should create a board called photography and pin like really awesome images in it because that's something that my audience wants to see. So it's related to my business. I mean, I can make it relate logically in my head. Um, Even though it's not exactly what I'm doing, it's something that's going to attract people to my Pinterest profile and help me get found. All right. And I had one note about advertising because I figured probably somebody would ask me about it. Pinterest now has an advertising service, but it's only available to US based businesses. I was trying to find out when it was going to be rolled out outside the US, but Pinterest is keeping their lips firmly shut about it. So we have no ETA when we can start advertising on Pinterest. But it's really interesting to read about the advertising rules, just to kind of prepare yourself if you think you might be interested in advertising when we finally get access to that. But it looks like they're trying really hard to make the promoted pins look as kind of natural and organic as regular pins. So they don't want any like flashy ads popping up or anything like that. They don't want to piss anybody off. They just want your Pinterest page to look the same as it has because they don't want to drive users away. I think they are maybe learning a little bit from Facebook in that regards, and that's probably why they're so hesitant to roll this out. Doing a lot of testing. So yeah, just a note in case anyone is interested in advertising, we don't have it in Canada yet. Okay, so that wraps up my presentation about Pinterest today. I'll just This is my social media contact information. And so if you're interested in finding out more, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to connect with me online. You don't have to connect with me everywhere. Of course, I wouldn't expect that. Just pick the network of your choice, whichever one you prefer. I'm always happy to answer questions. But in the meantime, we do have a few more minutes. If anyone had questions, I think I saw a couple scrolling through the chat while I was talking away. Now is question time. So let's see here. Okay. Oh, Kathleen. Okay, so here's a question. Could you use the movie pin for a YouTube video? Okay, so the thing about the movie pins is that those are the settings that the person would put on their website. So if you were just pinning a YouTube video, you couldn't classify it as a movie pin because you're just the pinner. But if you were making videos, for example, like maybe you were making a promotional video for your business and you put it on your website and you have all the rich pin things set up, it would classify as a movie pin because you can pin a video and then you can also have rich pins. So if you combine those, then you could definitely do something like that. It's just you don't have control over other people's um, kind of movies and videos. It would depend on how they've set up their website. So that's actually a really awesome question. I'm glad you asked that. Okay. I'm just scrolling through to see here. Is there any other questions? Okay, so Gail wants to know if I don't have my website up, can I set up so my Pinterest so it's connected to my Facebook page? Um, do you mean like in terms of connecting? You can connect your Facebook and Pinterest in a way that things that you do on Pinterest will show up on your personal Facebook page. Remember, you can't connect your Facebook business page to Pinterest, only your personal profile. And so you'll see on Facebook in the news feed, it'll say something like, oh, Gail pinned this pin to the board XYZ. So people will be able to see that activity, but it's not, I mean, there's nothing to say that's bad. Um, it's just you might not be reaching the people that you need to reach. Yeah, I know lots of people are asking for the functionality for Pinterest pages to be connected to Facebook pages. And I've seen some things where Pinterest is saying, oh, they're waiting for Facebook to allow that ability. And then, of course, other people are saying, oh, it's Pinterest who's doing it. Um, of course, you can connect other things to your Facebook page, so I don't really know what the holdup is. But yeah, I would really like to see that in the future where you could show your activity on your business page if Pinterest is really important to your business strategy. Okay, I hope that answers it. Connor wants to know, can we get a copy of the slideshow? Yep. Yeah, I don't think that would be any problem. I can certainly, um, I think I would get it to Riley and then he would send it out to everyone. We can talk about that after. I'm not quite sure how that works, but we can definitely get it to you.
Yeah, I think the best way to do it would be if they emailed you directly, Brandy, if that works. Or
Yeah. No, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, so if you guys want a copy of the slideshow, email me. And so the next question is, what is my email? And you know what? I don't have it on this slide. I can't believe I didn't put my email in here. I'm so sorry, guys. Hey, I'm going to tell you my email. Pardon?
Yeah, do you want to just say it and I'll put it in the chat box here?
Okay, sure. Or wait, how about, can I type in there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to type my email in the chat box then. Yeah, feel free to contact me and I will send it off.
Awesome. Thanks
There
a
you
lot.
guys go. Yeah. Yeah, so whoever wants a copy, just let me know. And I will send that off. All right, we have a couple more minutes. So does anyone have any more questions about any of the tools or analytics? I know I went really fast over the analytics, um, but I would highly recommend even just going to your account and checking them out. And oh, and if you go to your settings, you don't have analytics in there, it means that you don't have a Pinterest business account. So you want to look into that. It means you have a personal account, which doesn't have access to analytics and won't have access to ads. So yeah. Um, all right. Okay, 2 minutes, you guys. Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, I can see people typing, so I don't know if they're okay. So Jasmine wants to know, can you pin from other social media or just from websites? Oh, that's a good question. Um, so some websites won't let you pin images. I know Facebook, like if you try to pin an image, it will say it's not allowed. Now I know you were wondering about Google Plus. Google Plus I'm not 100% sure of. Because I know for Google Plus settings, there's actually a setting that everyone can have where it says, can people download your pictures or not? So it'll probably depend on what those settings are. So if it's your account and you wanted to pin your own images, if you had it set to be able to download, you probably could pin with, say, like a browser extension or something like that. So, but I'm not 100% sure, but that's my theory. So I'll probably go and check it out as soon as we're done on the call just to make sure if I gave you the right information. Okay. Um, yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess that looks like that's all of the questions. Thank you very much, Brandy. That was an excellent presentation.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, thanks everybody for attending. Thanks again, Brandy, for the excellent presentation, and have a great day, everybody.
All right. See you guys later.